The government just quietly passed a law that means every app, every website, and every digital service that your child uses will require to verify their age before it can collect data on them. This is not just social media anymore, it's everything. So by the time today's kids are adults, they will have grown up in a world where you have to show ID to use the internet. And they won't even question it, because it'll be everything that they've ever known. And I said this would happen in previous videos. Heed my warning. This is just the start. They will move this from protecting under 16 kids, and then they will bring in the age verification process for lots of other things. These policies are a slow burn, and it will only get worse. The laws are being put in place and are being used as justifications for the ongoing overreach. So I want to show you 3 things. The first one, I'm going to show you the evidence that the social media age ban that came in December 2025 is not working. The one the government said would protect kids, and they already knew that it wouldn't. The second is a brand new law, published just weeks ago, that extends age verification beyond the social media that they originally instigated to almost the entire internet. Baby monitors, school apps, photo sharing tools, and gaming platforms. And the third, and this is the part that nobody is connecting. Both of these laws land in the same month as Australia opening its digital ID system to private companies, banks, telcos, retailers, and social media companies. 3 policies, the same month, December 2026. So by the end of this video, you'll see exactly what is being built here. It's all related, and once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. I've already done some videos on this part, so feel free to go back and have a look at them. But number 1 on our list, it follows the aftermath of the December 10, 2025 Australian social media ban. Australia became the first country in the world to ban children under 16 from social media. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Snapchat, all the platforms gone for anyone under the age of 16. And the government's justification was mental health, cyberbullying, and addictive algorithms. At the time, 77% of Australians agreed. A YouGov poll showed nearly overwhelming public support. I don't think that they realized what was coming. And here's what the mainstream headlines do not tell you. To enforce this ban, platforms had to verify that users are over 16. And the methods that they were permitted to use were facial recognition, government documents, and bank accounts, typically. So anyone over the age of 16 in Australia needed to submit some of these documents or facial recognition to these platforms. That's what was passed into law, and almost nobody, except a handful, pushed back, including myself. Here's the thing that they don't want to be in the headlines. It didn't work. Before the ban even launched, Australia's own e-safety regulator released a report. Buried in that report was this: 80% of Australian children aged 8 to 12 were already using social media in 2024. Every single platform was relying only on self-declaration, so kids just typed in a fake birthday. 8 to 12-year-olds, not even teenagers, literal 8-year-old children, on platforms that technically banned them, getting in by just writing down a completely wrong birthday. And after the ban launched, ABC News reported that, quote, many children have already been able to get around the ban in various ways. And I covered some of the ways in previous videos. By March 2026, just 3 months after the ban began, the communications minister confirmed the government was formally investigating Facebook, Instagram, and a few other platforms for allowing children who had declared themselves underage to keep making new accounts and trying again. The world first landmark historic protection of children was being bypassed by 12-year-olds lying about their birthday. What did the government do? Did they admit that it wasn't working and reconsider? No, they expanded it, of course. Classic Australian government. They rolled out a system that was doomed to fail, and instead of reconsidering their mistake, they continued pushing the ridiculous rules. So moving on to our second issue. A brand new law was published for preview on March 31st, 2026. The Office of Australian Information Commissioner published a draft on something called the Children's Online Privacy Code. It's open right now for public consultation until June the 5th, and it becomes law in December 2026. When you hear Children's Privacy Code, you probably think, okay, more social media regulation. More of the same. It's not more of the same. The social media ban targeted 10 specific platforms. The Children's Online Privacy Code targets school management systems, online gaming platforms, and any service a child might access. So let's focus on that last one. Any service a child might access. Think about what that means. What service couldn't they theoretically access? This is the entirety of the internet that they're covering with this one statement. We're no longer talking about 10 social media platforms. We're talking about the internet. Again, they instituted a law to groom us into believing that we were protecting children and normalize identity verification for online services. Now, you might need to scan your child's face so they can check their timetable at school or play Fortnite with their friends. Here's the part of the code that I want you to pay close attention to, because this is the mechanism that makes everything else possible. The code says companies must, and I'm quoting the actual legislation, take reasonable steps to ascertain end users' age before collecting any further information about them. Before they collect your data, they need to know if you're a child. Sounds reasonable, right? Think about the logic for a second. To find out if someone's a child, you have to check the age of everyone, adults included. Age verification doesn't just screen children out, it processes every single user, adults, teenagers, everyone, and then separates them into categories. The check isn't, are you a child? The check is, how old are you? And that check applies to every Australian who touches any of these services, just like the social media ban. It's the classic we must protect children argument that results in the degradation of adult rights. So where does this justification come from? And the legislation boils down to what they claim are data points collected about children by the time they're 13 years of age. How many data points are they claiming? 72 million. That number wasn't pulled out of thin air, and it's not really made up. Once you contextualize it and understand where it comes from, it becomes a lot less daunting. So let's look at how they came to the outrageous claim that 72 million data points are collected about your child before the age of 13. The 72 million data points aren't sitting in a database somewhere in a single source. They're spread across thousands of unrelated advertising networks, and they include cookies, tracking pixels, page loading events, browser session tokens. And I know that might sound like some random jargon, but basically when you load a web page, you get all of these things in your browser. The research that produced this number originally came from an ad tech company studying how advertising trackers operate behind kids' games and apps. We're talking about data points like you visited this page, or you closed this ad, or you have an iPad. And let me show you just really quickly with a browser add-on called Ghostery, which shows you trackers, cookies, and more from loaded web pages. If we visit really common websites like Amazon or a newspaper website or even basic gaming websites, you can see that each time you visit one, there are anywhere between about 5 or 30 pieces of data collected. This is just generally a normal part of accepting how the internet works in 2026. They're not always personally identifying information for each user. Sure, if you collected enough of this information, you can sort of infer the age, location, and a few things about the user, but they don't know exactly who you are. They don't know anything personal really about you. These data points are the reason that why when you search for a plumber, the relevant location results show up. Or when you revisit a website, the item that you put in your shopping cart is still there. Is collection of this data concerning? Like maybe, but just telling Australians that the magic number of 72 million to scare them, it's not really the entire truth. Here is where the government logic falls apart. Their solution to 72 million distributed, largely anonymous advertising trackers is to collect your child's face data. This is a completely mask-off moment where you realize the evidence they presented is unjustified and the solution only motions their agenda rather than actually fix the problem. A cookie in your browser can be deleted, a browser can even be cleared. An advertising profile, as intrusive as it can be reset, blocked, or even transferred off your device. But the collection of your face, this is an immutable characteristic. You cannot reset your face. You cannot get a new face if it gets into a data leak. You can close a tab and you can start fresh. Let's look at some of the stats around biometrics. So facial data is a biometric and it's becoming an increasingly security risk. Biometric identity theft rose 1,300% in 2024 alone. There have been major breaches for biometric data. There was a firm that exposed over 1 million fingerprints and facial recognition records, and the US government lost 5.6 million federal employees' fingerprints in a single hack. India's national biometric ID system, containing data on over 1 billion citizens with a B, had admin access sold on WhatsApp for $8. So they sold their admin rights so someone could access that data for $8. These are some of the security concerns that a lot of people don't think about. And alongside the face scan, platforms are also permitted to collect your government ID, which risks identity theft on top of your biometrics. So the government looked at 72 million anonymous trackers spread across thousands of companies who can't talk to each other and decided the solution was to collect one piece of data so sensitive, so permanent, so uniquely tied to you as a human being that if it's ever breached, you're exposed for the rest of your life. That is not a solution to a data collection problem. That is trading 1,000 small risks for one catastrophic one. All right, I need to show you something. What I've told you so far with the social media ban, the children's online privacy code, those are the first two pieces of the puzzle. And I've been holding back the third piece because it really is the most important and might even be a video on its own soon. Without it, the policies just look kind of silly. When you tie them all together, they look like something else entirely different. At exactly the same time, the Children's Online Privacy Code becomes law. The Australian government's digital ID system, MyID, that's been running in beta since 2024, private companies can apply to directly plug into the same government identity infrastructure. Banks, retailers, but most importantly, social media companies. At the same month that every digital service is going to be legally required to verify your age, it's the same month that the commercial sector has landed the tools to do it. This is not a coincidence. They are forcing digital ID compliance. Heed my warning. And let me give you a sense of the scale that we're talking about. In the first 12 months of the digital ID system being available, 15 million Australians signed up. For context, we only have 27 million people. More than half the country already has digital ID, and they got there in year one. And of course, the propaganda continues. The Australian government's own media release described it as Australia's choosing a simply safer way to prove who they are online. And I want you to sit with that word, choosing. Because right now, today, participation in the digital ID system is technically voluntary. Unless you want to register a business, you do need a digital ID. But ask yourself this: when every service you use legally needs to know your age, what is the most efficient way to prove your age? It's the government ID, the digital ID. So how long does voluntary last? We'll let that hang in the air a little bit. Let me close a few of the loops that we've opened here. Earlier I asked, why does the government keep expanding these laws when social media ban clearly isn't working? And here's your answer. The goal is never to stop kids from using TikTok. The goal is to establish the principle in law, in public consciousness, that the internet requires identity verification. It's being normalized. We're normalizing this idea right now. And once the principle is law for social media, it's really, really easy for them to extend and push it onto everything else. So they create a law, they build the infrastructure, and then they normalize it across the private sector. The question of whether age verification should apply to adults too becomes much, much easier to answer. I believe, personally, that children of this generation are being groomed to believe that age verification on the internet is completely normal. And eventually, you'll be required to do it for everything, with the easiest and most convenient way to verify being digital ID. Each step is defensible on its own. Everything we've talked about in isolation is framed around protecting someone vulnerable, but the direction of travel has never changed. More data, more verification, more identity, and less anonymity. And I want to bring up one more thing that I haven't really mentioned, because the loops that I'm closing aren't just about Australia. When we passed the social media ban in December, governments around the world were looking. France, the UK, Germany, all of them. As early as 2026, they were all considering, or most of them were considering, bans or restricting, modeling based on what we did, Australia's approach to this. So we didn't just build an age verification system for us, it built a test case for the entire world. And the test is, will the public accept it? And so far, yes. Australians just accept things. I don't get it. And even advocate for them, with the 70% stat that I gave at the start saying that it was positive, because it's the right thing to do. They prey upon our weakness of wanting a safe society. Let's continue circling. Think about a 10-year-old in Australia right now. By December this year, when they log into their school app, it'll ask for verification. When they open a game, age verification. When they use a family photo tool, age verification. Every single one of these services will have been told by law to establish who this child is before collecting anything about them. Now fast forward 15 years, the 10-year-old is now 25, and they've been verifying their identity to use the internet for their entire online life. It doesn't seem like surveillance to them. It's just how the internet works. They won't march in the streets when the government suggests that age verification should be permanent for all users, because they'll never have known any different. This is how any major expanse of state power has historically succeeded. Not through force, through normalization. Through timing, so that the generation who could have objected the loudest grows old, and the generation who inherited the system never knew any different. In Australia right now, you show ID to buy alcohol. That feels completely normal. No one protests it, no one questions it. It's just how it is, and honestly, I don't have a problem with it. But there was a time before that law existed. There was a generation that bought beer without handing over their license, or purchased cigarettes for their parents from the local milk bar. And the generation that came after them never knew any different about giving over their ID. So the question I'm asking today is the internet more like a pub where you should be asked for ID, or is the internet more like a road, public infrastructure, where requiring identification for every journey would be recognized immediately as totalitarian overreach? Because depending on which one you think it is, the laws passed right now either make complete sense, or they're one of the most significant erosions of civil liberties in Australia's digital history. So where does this leave us? I want you to hold on to the pattern that we've traced today. Not the individual policies. Like I said, if you look at them in isolation, it seems like they make sense. But if you look at the pattern, a policy that doesn't work but establishes a principle, a follow-up policy that extends the principle further, and the infrastructure rollout that makes the enforcement at a large scale possible. If you watch the three things together, you're not watching three separate government decisions, you're watching a system being built. And I'm going to continue making videos about digital policy and how it affects all Australians. So if you want to know more, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you.